make sure that our community is educated. My job tonight is to briefly set the context, and so I just want to make a few points. Number one, we've been at it for a long time, but we've never been closer, and there's never been a clearer path to success than we have now. We now have something that everybody sees really works, and it's finally being recognized and supported by the town's leaders. Number two, the project has many major benefits for the whole community, not just some homeowners on Baxter Road, which is also, of course, important, but the hundreds of people who walk and like the lighthouse. And as everybody knows, that's the only way to get to the lighthouse. Perhaps one of Nantucket's most recognizable and iconic places to visit. Number three, we've come a long way, but we still have quite a ways to go. I started calling this a multi-generational effort, which is why I'm so pleased that Meredith has agreed to step up and is providing wonderful leadership, not just herself, but her parents, her daughter. We've got the whole family business involved here, which is fantastic. And of course, we could use others who want to join us. There's things to do, and so at the end of the evening, if you are willing to help us with some of the things that still need to be done, please do come up so that we can put you to work. So with that, we run through a couple of slides and then turn it back over to Meredith, who's going to do most of the presenting tonight. Our goal is to finish the presentation by maybe 6:30, 6:35, and have half an hour or so before 7 o'clock for us to answer questions and have a community discussion. So, how do we move the slides? What do I do? I hit next. All right. You guys will probably figure out how to do that. I can see that. So, we have a professional team that's been working on this case. Stephen Cohen is our local legal counsel. Most of you know Stephen had just a horrific accident a year ago, but he is still in touch with us, and he is making a comeback, and so he's definitely still part of our team. Chip Nyland is our off-island wetlands expert. He's been doing this kind of work for decades, and has really been fantastic. And Epsilon Associates continues to work with us, Wake Up and Maria Hartnett. And then Baird, which is a big operation, will be probably increasingly involved as we get into the offshore sand business. I think everybody understands why this area needs to be protected. We stick out farther into the Atlantic than anybody. Erosion was kind of not really something that people thought about in the 60s and before that. It started kind of rapidly increasing, and we have been doing our best to try and find something that will work, and I think we're on something now. The numbers of people who go up to the lighthouse, as well as the community, the historic community that lives up off of Baxter Road. That's why we need the protection. So this project timeline, if you really kind of dial back to the beginning, in the early 90s, Helmut Weimar got us all started. We've gone through many different phases since the 90s prior to this particular project. De-watering, you might remember. Beach nourishment, you might remember. In 2013, 2012 and 2013, that winter was a horrendous winter. There was a tremendous amount of erosion with areas collapsing to the tune of 30 feet. that point, Wisconsin Beach Preservation stepped up to the town and said, let's work together to do two things. First, let's try to protect the bluff and keep the road from having to be closed. But we'll also work with you so that if that can't work, if that's not successful, we'll work with you to cooperatively find an alternative access route. So that's what we've been doing since 2013. We first got a pilot project approved in 2013, and that's when the geotubes that are there now got first installed. They've been quite successful, but we've known from the beginning that the only way this project can be sustainable economically is if it's expanded to protect the homes of the people who still have a viable home and are paying most of the bills for this project. And so we've been working to try and get the pilot project expanded really for 10 years. That happened in March, which is fantastic. Why it had to take so long is, crazy, but we did get there. However, it still needs to get approved by town meeting. There's opponents that appealed the approval of the project by the Conservation Commission. So there's still many miles ahead of us. But the idea of forming a partnership with the town of Nantucket, which is what we did in 2024, to put forward this expanded project, that's really changed the game. So, with that, Eric, come back up. Great, thank you.
So as Josh said, one of the biggest elements of how we have been successful over the last 15 months and the last 12 years is because of our partnership with the town. In March of 2022, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the town and the select board, and that became the foundation upon which we built a collaborative relationship, working together. And then in December 2023, we for the first time filed a joint application, or what you might also hear as an NOI, Notice of Intent, to the Conservation Commission, which Josh indicated got approved this March. And so for the first time, sbpf and the town are aligned together, confirming that obviously the geotube expansion project can satisfy both the state and the local wetland protection standards. And so you might hear a little bit about, and especially as we move forward down this process, what is then a public-private partnership? What does that mean? Well, sbpf is the private entity in connection with this public-private partnership. We are privately funding and designing and permitting and constructing the expanded geotube project. The town is our collaborative partner. They are supporting us in this endeavor, which is important. They're providing us oversight and accountability. And as Josh indicated, they will also be working with us once the town votes at an all-town meeting, which we hope will occur this fall, to issue a license agreement for us to be able to build the project partially on town land. But most importantly, with this public-private partnership, it is understood that the full-time residents and taxpayers of Nantucket will not be funding the requirements of this project. Part of our partnership is obviously with the town, and the town has elected Vincent Murphy from the Nantucket National Resources Department to be their representative. And so we just want to play a quick clip of how the town views this project.
In the winter of 2012 to 2013, a pilot project was installed to address severe erosion in the area, which led to the installation of the current geotubes. By 2015, the geotubes were expanded to cover the nearly 1,000 feet of shoreline that they are today. Although the maintenance of the geotubes has posed challenges, up to this point the structure has served its purpose of mitigating erosion along the bluff. However, the issue now is that the nearly 1,000 feet of current geotubes in place only covers that area, leaving the northern and southern areas vulnerable to erosion with lesser or no protection measures. In response to this, the town and the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund, SBPF, have partnered to file a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. The goal of this initiative is to extend the same level of toe stabilization to approximately 3/4 of Baxter Road and safeguard an area where the bluff is currently eroding. This joint planning effort not only aims to protect properties in the area, but also plays an important role in serving the current location of the public road. The entire project will be funded with no financial burden to the town or taxpayers. Another great benefit to the community is that this undertaking will offer an opportunity to enhance public access to the beach. Plans include the installation of 1 to 2 staircases. This project is a public-private partnership with significant benefits to the community, and it serves as a model for addressing similar coastal erosion challenges in other areas of the island.
So I know most of you, I can kind of see most of your faces, are probably already aware of it, but I think it's always important to make sure everybody really understands what are we talking about. A lot of times we talk about geotubes. What are they? What are they? You can see at the top, they are 7 foot tall and 5 foot, 1, maybe 2, I'll say. So they're 7 foot tall geotextile structures that are filled with water, pressurized water and sand that are located at the toe of the bluff. These 4, the bottom is located under the level of the sand that you're walking along, and the other 3 are located along the face of the bluff in order for sand to be located at the top, which is called the sand template, and then along the face. And so the purpose is that during a storm event, the ocean will take away the sand that's at the toe, and then we will replace by pouring the sand that is on the template back down and over the toe of the template and the geotube. It will then obviously produce an opportunity for the sand that would typically be contributed to the littoral system to occur in its natural condition, where it then goes back to the ocean, the littoral system in that process. So this is what it looks like. For those of you who walked along Baxter Road, you see the image on the left here, looking down. The pilot project, as Josh indicated, it has done its job. It has stabilized the bank, it has protected Baxter Road for all of us in the community and the island that enjoy walking along it. As you can see, it has allowed for vegetation to grow and to stabilize the bluff and protect the toe. We're looking down onto the top of the 5 geotubes in the left image, and on the right, if you're walking along the beach, you can see the covered geotubes to your left. If this works, right, then what was the problem? Why did it take us 12 years to go back and forth and figure this out? And why did it take us also 15 months to work with the Conservation Commission to eventually get it approved? Well, the original approval for the NOI included a 22 cubic yard per foot per year requirement. That was a gross over requirement in regards to the number of sand, the amount of sand. It took us all this time to eventually get what was approved this March, which is an adaptive sand plan. So this is sand that it is only what is taken from the littoral system is then put back to the littoral system. So instead of having 22 cubic yard every year requirement, if one segment has only 7 cubic yards of sand that is taken from a storm event, we then only have to put back 7, which is much more reasonable, and it obviously allows them for a viable project that also complies with the bylaws and the state regulations. A lot of people think about this project and only view it as a geotube project. It's important to understand that this project includes beach nourishment as well as bar terrace work and geotubes. This is a 5-reach approach which will occur in a 2-phase process. So the first reach goes all the way up to 119 Baxter Road and goes from 119 to 107, which would be geotubes. Reach 2 is the existing pilot project along with about 300 feet to the north and to the south of the current GO2 project. And Reach 3 is from 85 Baxter Road to 71 Baxter Road. That would be the first phase, phase 1 of the project. Phase 2 of the project would be Reach 4, which is from 71 to 61, which would be car terraces until a point in time when we have offshore sand obtained, and then it would automatically trigger to then be converted to GO2s. And Reach 5 is from 53 to 41 Baxter, which would be sand nourishment, automatically triggering to car terraces and then GO2s upon that area hitting specific triggering requirements. We protect pre-1978 homes along Baxter Road. It protects infrastructure, it protects the road, it protects our important access to the lighthouse, but it also does much more. Part of our collaboration with the town was providing additional public benefits. That includes providing benches at the current viewing station where people are walking up and down Baxter Road for them to be able to take a break and sit down. It will also include pet waste retrieval locations so that people can properly dump that in a proper location, as well as access to the beach to reinvigorate the public recreational access in this area. Over the course of the 15 months in which we presented this application to the Conservation Commission, half of that time was discussing the final order of conditions. And that order of conditions includes what I would call belts and suspenders and maybe even a life preserver being thrown in there as well. But it's really important because it gives both the residents, it gives our opposition, it gives the town a level of comfort and security that we are considering and ensuring that we are protecting for things that we have learned and have been lessons learned throughout the process over the last 12 years. So that includes annual surveys, storm response reports, ensuring sand delivery timeframes. It also includes conditions in which the applicant, sbpf, would obviously have to obtain and execute a contract for all of our monitoring for the entire life of the project. It also includes requirements in which we would must prove that the nourishment sand has been purchased for the entire year in advance, as well as an obligation for 10% of the sand to be located in some on-site storage facility or location. As we talked about, we were very excited after 12 years of working on this. We did get the approval from the Conservation Commission in March. We do, however, as Josh said, and we all probably know, still have a ways to go and have additional hurdles that are in front of us. That includes the fact that there are opposition groups that appealed the Conservation Commission's order and will now be reviewed by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. In June, those of you who were here, we had about 30 people come to the site and participated with the Mass DEP staff member who will be reviewing and issuing the final order on this case at the facility. You can see in the picture here, not only do we have local representatives, but all of the voting members of the Conservation Commission came in person to support their order. The Secretary for the Conservation Commission spoke in support of the order, and he said that this is probably, in his mind, one of the most strongly and well-drafted orders that has been issued in all of Nantucket. And so we are obviously next in this next phase in which we are hoping for at the end of the summer or probably early fall to have a decision from the Mass DEP. What also has happened since March, we had a wonderful donation from a Baxter Road homeowner that donated over 6,500 cubic yards of sand that allowed us to rebuild the Boyce Hollow ramp. So any of you are going to Sandy Head and enjoying the pool or the facilities there, and you want to walk down to get to the beach, that has been rebuilt by a donation from sbpf, and that also serves as our equipment location where we get down and we access the maintenance on the GO2s. The donated sand also was enough to recover the entire project and the entire existing GO2 project. So what's next? What's next is that we are continuing to work with the town. We have continued meetings with Libby Gibson and Vince Murphy and select board members to review the license agreement, which would need to be voted on at town meeting. We are hopeful that town meeting will occur this fall, in which we are looking for all of our residents and all of our friends in the audience here today and continue to encourage those who may know to support in favor of that vote. We are waiting on the final decision from the Mass DEP and the issuance of a superseding order, and we are undergoing the initial phase of our fundraising efforts as we prepare for pre-construction. And so with that, I know there are probably a lot of questions. I am going to, we're going to open it up for questions and see, we're happy to engage and answer whatever questions you all have.
First, I want to say we owe a lot of money. We have stayed with it through thick and thin. However, I can tell you a little bit about this little kid. At 105 Baxter Road. And had in front of us about 200 feet of lawn. As they could. They came inside the 3-mile limit. They scraped right along the road. And they got
We're talking about ancient history here. I always follow what Marilyn says because in 1963, 1964, on the Isle show, she was my mother.
I think maybe, Doug, your protein show. 3 short questions. These are what they're short. One, what is the difference between a core and a geotube? 2, where are you going to get the sand during the various stages of the project? And 3, how will the sand be transported to the site? Maybe I'm worried about all Wisconsin roads. And congratulations on working on this project.
So FAR rolls are smaller rolls that are held together, probably more about up to my knee. They're probably like 2 to 3 feet tall, so they're much smaller, and they allow the wave power to come up and pull it into the ocean. So they are identified as not an adequate alternative. They are also filled with sand, but they are filled with sand manually and then stitched together, whereas the geotubes, as I said, are 7 feet tall, and they are pressurized and filled by a pressurized water sludge sand, and so they're much stronger, and they are a higher project, the overall project at 25 feet elevation. So that's the difference they have to analyze between the two of them for what works and what doesn't. The sand, we will be sourcing that from multiple locations. There will be potentially some locations on island, obviously, as many of our friends continue to do construction projects. Those will be great sources of sand that we can use. We also have contractors that we've been working with throughout the life of this project that have access and communication with sand. So we have identified certain locations, but in connection with the order, we have to first tell the Conservation Commission where the sand is. There is a 4-step process to ensure that the sand is similar and identical to the current sand that's on the beach, and it has no environmental impact. So there is a very full and lengthy process to ensure the sand that we're using is of the same quality as the sand is currently on the beach. And your last question about the trucks, I know it's been something on Facebook. You can see images of all the number of trucks and everything. back to its status quo of its pre-construction ability. So we think that that's a really solid opportunity to kind of answer that question. We'll go to,
I don't really think I need my map or Chris Brzezinski at 69 Maxer. I just wondered what led to the decision to end geotubes at 71 Maxer.
So that was decided by our expert consultants as they designed the project, and that's what we were calling concept.
We're trying to come up with a phasing that would keep the town on board with the project. So, and kind of draw the line somewhere. That's where it's been drawn. I think that when we get the sustainable sand source, which is the main trigger that we need in order to expand to the next group, to expand the geotubes to the next group. Hopefully that will be something that we can accomplish in relatively short period of time. And in the meantime, we'll be maintaining the bar effectively, so hopefully we'll be able to get through it that way.
I would think we should be clear that the whole project contemplates an multiple organization.
So, yeah, the first question was where's the sand going to come from? And on an interim basis, we're going to need to get it from the sources that Meredith is talking about. But in order for this project to really become self-sufficient and sustainable, we need to dredge sand from offshore and store it probably in the vicinity of the old Wisconsin sewer beds. And then we would be moving the sand from that location up to the geotube project in a pipeline along the back of the beach and not in trucks. And so when we say there's a long way to go and there's a number of steps ahead of us, that's a big step, but it's an essential step. The cost of sand when we started this project was less than $25 per cubic yard. Now it's $100 per cubic yard. And occasionally we get lucky and somebody will donate the sand from digging a foundation. But you can't make this project work long term with $100 a cubic yard.
So we're going to come here and come back.
Chase now, 14, Baxter. Congratulations on the positive momentum support the town leadership and conservation commission. As I understand it, next clear order to the town code, and that's another one of those on the project itself. Some questions. What is the plan? That's road, and back, what is the plan?
Yeah, so town meeting is a unique process for those of you who may have attended. The island has about 5,000 registered voters, about 1,000 or less attend town meeting, and it is a 51% vote that is required. So we have to get a majority of those in attendance to vote in support. We have started in about April, increasing our social media and our PR campaign to ensure that we are trying to improve our public image of the entire community. So hopefully anybody who has seen our updated Facebook or Instagram account, we have also tried to include additional information there about the public benefits. And our goal is to continue to work with the town and have them standing shoulder to shoulder with us in that meeting and indicating why they believe this is an important project. And in connection with that, we've had, as I said, one-on-one meetings with Libby Gibson, and Ms. Murphy, in order for Libby to see that this is a needed project. She came physically to the Baxter Road last week and literally saw how close certain areas are that are not protected right now, both to the north and the south of the GO2 project, and that's a really important, critical step. So, yes, there are a lot of costs. There are costs for lawyers and costs for experts and costs for PR groups. And so we are continuing, obviously, as I said, this is our next phase, which includes fundraising. And so we are obviously eager to continue to have support of those in the community so that we can afford to continue to fight for this great cause.
Eventually, when this becomes a sustainable project, it's going to require the funding to become regularized. So far, everything has been voluntary contributions from people who want to support the project. What does that mean? Roughly speaking, we've had 25 to 30 people be extremely generous over the last 12 years. We've raised $18 million to support this project, to build and maintain it. It costs about $1 million a year to operate when we're doing full sand payments. There's a lot there's a number of moving parts in terms of what will the ongoing sustainable financial plan be. But essentially, it's going to need to be a process where the beneficiaries, all of the homeowners who are benefiting and getting protection, are making a payment based on a fair formula that gets created. I've tried. I know nobody likes to use the word taxes, and they don't need to really be taxes, but they need to be regular, required payments from the beneficiaries that will be, I've thought in the projections say that they'll be in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 annually from direct beneficiaries. It's a lot, but having your home go from being a viable place to live to being zero, which has happened to a whole bunch of houses on Baxter Road, is much more expensive.
Could you please just define who the direct beneficiaries are? And also earlier in your comments, Josh, you mentioned that at town meeting that the article or whatever the warrants, I don't even know what the terminology is that they use at town meeting, but that no full-time residents would be taxed. Is that accurate, or was that?
I don't think it's realistic that the cost of this project is going to get built into the town's core budget. I do think that it's possible that we might be able to get the land bank, for example, to get involved in supporting the vacant lots and in some of the recreational ideas that Meredith was describing. I do think that we'll need to create some kind of Sconset-wide philanthropy. There are parts of Baxter Road that are vacant lots, and so you can't expect sbpf owns 3 of them because people moved away and donated land, so they have no value. So it's going to need to be a combination of philanthropy, possibly the land bank, and I think sort of a supplemental property tax system for the direct beneficiaries. Now, who are the direct beneficiaries. So certainly the people who are right behind where the geotubes are going to be located. But possibly people at a different rate on the other side of Baxter Road are also beneficiaries. There's work to do to kind of create a consensus among our community about how to structure this. It's not something that is going to be an easy conversation, and it's really not something that was practical to do without having a permit and the ability to actually install this.
From a timing perspective, it's most likely going to be something, I know Josh was taxed, but I always want to make sure we're looking for specific wording. It's probably not going to be a tax, because that would obviously identify more control from the town. It might be more something like an HOA or an association, obviously everybody is getting into that for those maintenance costs in that regard.
David Bailey from One Year's Baxter, and with us in example as well. You mentioned maybe lots of Baxter. I guess my question, Josh, you mentioned 30 to 50 as an estimate of cost. Are you speaking about the whole access or the whole of the GO2 project?
Talking about the GO2 project, so the alternate access plan would be, that's, now when we're talking the alternate access plan, which makes sure everyone's clear on that, that is what the town has created to potentially relocate the road if Baxter Road were to no longer be viable. And so that would be funded through most likely the town issuing a betterment, and that would be a betterment tax that the town would control, and the select board would determine what the geography is for that betterment. The cost that Josh referenced is what would be more like, as I said, a homeowners association, where all of us who are benefiting from the project would voluntarily enter into that relationship and into that agreement and agree to then pay on a month-to-month basis something that, based on your linear footage and your proximity to the geotubes, a percentage of the overall cost on a pro rata basis.
Thank you. And how, my understanding too is that the town might be leaning on resident development access process. How might the SBPF be involved?
So that will be part of our work with the license agreement. And the most important thing for anyone to understand is if we get the GO2 approved in town, then we will work with the town in connection with the alternative road, and there will be very specific language that any potential agreements would be held in a secure escrow that would not trigger or spring into effect until such time as the GO2 project came into failure criteria.
Perhaps the alternate access plan would be fully independently. Is that not the case?
No, the alternate access plan is not funded, is not fully construction ready to design, and so it is literally, I would say, in a holding pattern. And the town's primary goal is to get the GO2 project approved and constructed.
Understood, and thanks again for
It's a backup plan, Dave. It's not, they want to have it ready to go, but it doesn't actually go into effect unless the GO2 project is no longer functional.
We have a timeline.
The question was, they have the timeline mapped out starting next year. They do, but we have had meetings, they have no funding for it. And so it has not been funded, it is not something that they are pursuing. Their primary goal is for us to be in a position to start on the GO2 as soon as possible.
When is the agreement that you were negotiating now expected or hoped to be agreed upon?
So we're continuing to work on it. Obviously,
in other communities facing this kind of erosion problem? Number one, is that true? And if so, have we presented these examples of success? And I connect it to the criticism that I hear from time to time, notwithstanding that the geotubes appear to stabilize the bluff, it contributes to moving sand up or down, away, somewhere from various parts of the rest of the coastline. And I've never heard, what's the answer to that criticism?
So in our 14 months of hearings, one of our hearings where we did present with our expert, Dr. White Duff, we did present, I believe that there are 3 examples in the United States in which geotubes are currently being utilized. They are being utilized, though, I would say, unfortunately, in slightly different forms. None of them, I would say, is 100% exactly like what we have in our condition based on the height of the bluff and the proposed array that we are providing. But there are, we have shown the Conservation Commission that these work in other areas and are great, have great success in other areas as well. In regards to the littoral system, and I might have been wrong, Josh, because I'm lay people here that have been living this, Josh has been a lot longer than I have. But Dr. Drake said the littoral system is about 150 feet into the ocean from the beach edge. And so the area that the Baxter Road is located on is one of the most volatile and unique areas in regards to wave action. And so it really moves that littoral sand constantly back and forth along that area. And the whole goal of the geotube project is that we are contributing the appropriate amount of sand, again, with the sand mitigation and adaptive sand program, and not just this unnecessary number of filters. So I hope that answers your question.
Supplement a little bit. So the geotubes keep the waves from washing away the bluff, the toe of the bluff. The sand that's on top of the geotubes compensates for the sand that would have washed away if the geotubes weren't there. Now we have data that has measured how much used to wash away from that bluff. And that's the amount of sand that we put on top of the geotubes, which are designed to wash away those storms. So it's not the geotubes that either add or subtract from this impact on the beaches, updrift and downdrift. It's the amount of sand.
It's also, I've heard that in a nor'easter, because of the nor'easter pattern, counterclockwise winds, that the wind, like a circular saw, comes down from east to west or south, and it's not the wave action at the bottom of the bluff, it's the wind that cuts into the bluff all the way up to the top to the road.
No, that's not right. It's mostly the waves at the bottom.
But I would just say, though, it is majority of the waves at the bottom and how extreme those waves are. But the benefit of the geotube project is also, as you saw in the images, and I'm sure we've all visually seen ourselves, when the bluff is not vegetated, to your point, when we do have a nor'easter, it does allow for sand to be pulled off the face of the bluff, not the toe. So the biggest problem is the geotubes protect the toe. When you lose the toe, the entire everything tumbles over, right? But if we can protect not just the toe, but we also can create a situation in which the bluff can be vegetated and stabilized. The more green that is grown there, the less frequent you're going to have with those winds pulling sand away from the face of the bluff. And we have seen that, obviously, in the project.
Rotary, whatever it is, people who actually vote, when we go to the meeting, having us here is great. Most of us can't vote. So what do you do to do that? By the way, this is the first time I've read or heard that it's not going to cost a taxpayer in order to do this project. And that would seem to be a line we'd be sitting at one of these town meetings. How much is it going to cost me? And if it isn't going to cost me, I think I might be more favorable, given some of the bad press that's been out there over the years. But it really requires that type of effort, grassroots, getting the people who actually show up and understand what it is that we represent.
In fact, if the geotubes are not built and Baxter Road collapses, that's where it really is going to cost the town. Their own estimates say that's going to be $30, $40, $50 million, and that's before any of the lawsuits that might happen. We think that we can, you're absolutely right, we need a campaign to address the voters at town meeting. None of us are voters, very few of us in Wisconsin are voters. But with the select board, with the conservation commission, with the town behind this effort, I think it changes it. And we'll be working with the people who are articulate and often stand up and speak at town meeting, who will be supportive, we believe. We're happy to go and talk to some of these groups. Our PR operation actually is, will kind of kick in some kind of a voter identification element as well. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be, it's an easy thing for people to bring about. Let's take one or two more questions and then, Rob?
Thank you very much. Hi, it's Rob. I had some thoughts looking at the photographs of all this, and I think it's important for people to understand the difference between this, the theory behind this kind of project, where you have nourishment going on, and nourishment is part of what's tricky about any kind of coastal structure you do. If I had some slides to put up there, I would. But I can invite you to look on any of the GIS or the Google Earth type maps, and if you look at the properties along west of the West Jet going all the way to Illinois down Illinois Road, there's 5 or 6 houses there, but the erosion over there on the north shore is terrible too. And people have been able to buttress up their property to keep the waves going there. Look at the aerial photography where they've been permitted to put iron armor in front of their houses. The house is doing pretty well, but 2 things are happening. There's no nourishment, so anytime you put a building or something out front, there's no transport of sand, so anybody downstream loses their beach because the transportation of sand is stopped. But in addition, it's dramatic, as you can see how each one of these properties sticks out in the south. So their house is good, but it's becoming a little peninsula. And the difference being that this is a nourishment system where those others are not. And that's the big difference, and that's why the Wetlands Protection Act has very specific points to address about each armor. And also, there's a number of properties on the south shore of the Inner Harbor, very same thing. There's been terrible erosion there too. The properties have been armored, they stick out into the body of water, there's no transport of sand. And talking about blocking beach access, you can't get by into these places. So it's a whole different system, and that's why this seems so much better than the traditional way of using the property. Thank you.
In terms of how areas